Kicking off the list at number 10, the Pluto slug. Back in January 2016, the New Horizons probe was sending tons of new information back from our little ex-planet Pluto. The icy plain shows a series of lines, almost like these giant space slugs, dare I say, are slowly moving across the surface of the planet. Check it out. It reminds me of the episode of SpongeBob where the gang, rides a rock across the ocean floor. Maybe Patrick and SpongeBob are delivering a pizza on Pluto, okay? They could be just in the weeds, they could be busy. This icy area of the dwarf planet is called the Sputnik Planum. Scientists believe so far the reason for all these lines is that the planet is breathing in a way. If that sounds creepy, it's because it kind of is. The planet's cooling and heating and it's kind of moving around. But we'll leave some room open for space slugs because, you know what, at this day and age, you never know. I've seen enough Avenger movies, I'm like, could be space worms. Number 9, Mima's moon. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Just kidding, this one's actually really close. It's Saturn, it's right there. Saturn is known for having a plethora of moons. Saturn in total has 82 moons, including this one, Mima's. A moon that looks oddly familiar. Why do I feel like it's gonna just blast us all to smithereens? Why do I feel like that's gonna happen? Is that the Death Star? Is this thing pointing at Earth? Which way is it pointing here? That really matters. Saturn's smallest innermost moon is causing quite the stir here on Earth. About a month ago, researchers discovered that this moon has a bit of a wobble to it, almost like a floating magic 8-ball. Something is sloshing around inside. Its gravitational pull is a little off. It's just grooving around in the solar system, Mima could potentially be housing a liquid ocean. Yep, we got more water in space. It's pretty close too. If that was the case, everything we know about water and ocean life in space would have to be rewritten. Number 8, black hole helix. Imagine peering through a telescope and then you see this. I would throw up right into my telescope. This is a galactic jet. It's shot out of a black hole at the center of the M87 galaxy. It's pretty scary looking. This helix shot out a whopping 8,000 light years. Yeah, it's pretty far. That's so far I can't even fathom how far that is. My brain won't allow me to really picture that. This sounds like a threat, really, but I'll remind you that the M87 galaxy is 55 million light years away from us, so we're not gonna get any galactic jet on our hands anytime soon, know what I mean? But just how does something like this happen? Astronomers in New Mexico discovered that this massive jet is caused by a corkscrew-shaped magnetic field. What in the witchcraft? Like what? Like a space undertow made out of gravity. That doesn't sound jarring at all. According to the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, this is the longest magnetic fields ever found in a galactic jet. Which is fine, that's the first time I've heard of that. I'm like, you can take that rain, enjoy it. We're not gonna try and beat you. It's stuff like this where I ask myself why I'm worrying about a phone bill. Humans are so tiny compared to this. It's insane. We don't matter. Hey, number 8, we don't matter. Hit that thumbs up. Number 7, Jupiter's clouds. We've all seen and heard of Jupiter's big red spot. That's just a nightmare in itself. So big, always going, no idea why, can't even think about it. But when NASA's Juno spacecraft passed the Goliath back in 2017, it captured something almost just as interesting, if not more, dare I say. Jupiter's clouds. It feels like you can just put your arm out and touch the silky space sky. It's beautiful, but that's about 20,000 kilometers away. It's also quite scary. This big ball of hydrogen is quite mysterious below these clouds. So far, NASA has found lightning higher up than they ever thought it could go. We've also found constant storms at both the North and South Pole, and winds so powerful that the planet's magnetic fields are literally being moved around. That's how strong the wind is. Your skin would just blow off. You'd be a skeleton just standing there. Beautiful, mysterious, and deadly. We love space on MA10. Number 6, Mars trees. This looks like moldy bread almost. What in the hell? What are we looking at here? Is this actually a real photo from Mars? Are those trees? There's not a chance here. Matt Damon grew potatoes on Mars in the movie The Martian, but I don't think he can grow any pine trees anytime soon. What you're looking at here is still pretty insane. Due to the evaporation of carbon dioxide frost, dark sand is sliding down the frosted side of the dune, so it makes it look like there's trees on the planet Mars. Sun-heated carbon dioxide ice. That's just, I read that and I go, what? What does that even mean? Where do I start with this? We thought we found a giant alien back in 1976 when NASA's Viking 1 flew by and it looked like a face was in the planet. Remember that? It looks like a Jabberwocky, it's just lying getting a suntan. This one here isn't an optical illusion, it's just weird space science. Number 5, smooth moon. When we think of moons in the sky, or like how other planets have other moons, we think of them as our own. Just a big ball of cheese in the sky, a big sphere, it's got craters, it's pale, we get it, right? Well, as we've seen so far in this list, some moons can look like the Death Star, and some moons can look like chewed gum, apparently. Saturn's small moon Atlas looks like a UFO. It's not a sphere at all, it literally has the shape of a UFO. How scary is that? NASA's Cassini spacecraft caught this image back in 2017, and it almost looks like two moons have crashed into one another, and then now it has a ring-like edge to it. When new photos came back after discovering this moon way back in 1980, scientists were surprised that this moon is actually really smooth. In 4K, they're like, oh, it's not even the pixels, it's actually really smooth. A smooth moon, you say? Let me take a look here. This little smooth moon in the sky, little pervert. Number 4, dead galaxies. This one sounds scary. Dead galaxies. Guardians of the dead galaxy. New research from NASA, including the Hubble Space Telescope, along with the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array in northern Chile, they found 6 different dead galaxies in total. They're all like, that's 1, that's 2, and they're like, hey, we found 4, all dead, horrifying. How does this happen? Let's look into it. These dead galaxies had run out of the cold hydrogen needed to make stars, and without the fuel for new stars, these galaxies were basically running on nothing at that point. It's kind of like when your car battery dies, only this is on a cosmic scale. This discovery led us to new questions we didn't even know we had. Like, what led to these galaxies to die anyways? What happened to all the cold gas in them so early on? These 6 galaxies lived fast and hot lives, but we aren't sure what went wrong quite yet. Lead author and assistant professor of astronomy at the University of Massachusetts, Kate Whitaker, she proposed several potential explanations and gave us insight onto the future of the studies, which she said, did a supermassive black hole in the galaxy's center turn on and heat up all the gas? If so, the gas could still be out there, but now it's just cold. We need Thanos to come back and just, start this fire up. Just someone get a Bic lighter and just go and just light it back up. Alas, new life. Is that Thor? Welcome back. Number 3, solar flares. Our lives literally revolve around the sun. It blesses us with life energy, solar rotation, and most importantly, tan lines, obviously. But sometimes she acts up. Sometimes she gets a little cray-cray. Sometimes she gets a little and then she spurts out lava and scares us all. Sometimes she creates these powerful magnetic fields that create sunspots larger than our entire planet. Yep, like I said, she's moody. This creates a stream of radiation. It's called solar wind. Now, normally this is a beautiful event to see. We have many photos of it now. The northern lights happen because of Earth's magnetic field reacting to this specific radiation. Beautiful, but really scary when you think about it. This past October, a large solar flare was spotted, and then 3 days later, it finally hit Earth. The geomagnetic storm reached category G2, which out of 5 is pretty strong, especially when you look at it as on a planetary scale. The biggest solar event was back in 1859. It's called the Carrington event. It was strong enough to disrupt telegraph communications, even literally shocking some telegraph operators. Like, if that happens again, and it's even stronger this time, we're looking at huge power outages on a massive scale. Imagine talking to someone on your iPhone and it blows up. Right in the middle of Avatar 2, boom, blackout. Life as we know it is now meaningless. We're all crying in public. Number 2, the space crab. Is the multiverse collapsing? What is this? The appropriately named Space Crab Nebula was discovered back in 1054. Yeah, way back then, astronomers looked into the sky and saw this new bright star. They saw it during daytime, that's how they knew something was up. What they were observing at the time was a supernova explosion. How spectacular is that? This was when the Crab Nebula was born. It's not too far away either. It's just a mere, 6,500 light years tucked away in the constellation Taurus. If you're a Taurus, you're watching, you're like, oh, no way. I'm a Libra. I'm like, get out of here. What do you know? The image of the space crab here was captured over the course of 3 months. NASA put together 24 exposures captured by, of course, our Hubble. The orange glow we see, those are literally star remains, just large pockets of hydrogen. The interesting part here with the space crab is back in 2005, over the course of 10 Hubble exposures from September to November, these waves can be seen expanding outwards, waves coming from the nebula's pulsar. Space is so scary. We have one moon to worry about here. Meanwhile, all of this is going on in our space neighborhood. I'm terrified. And finally, number 1, mystery wave. More waves coming in hot. Really hot this time around. If you've seen Interstellar, this next one should hit close to home. I'm not a fan of wave pools or waves in general. My stupid head just bobbing around in the ocean, that's peril. That's That's a nightmare situation. I can't swim too well. I don't know, I'm too lanky. I'm like a piece of seaweed floating around. The largest wave ever seen in the entire solar system. Of course, I had to save this one for last. On a planet a little closer to the sun, Venus, the pressure in the atmosphere can cause some massive waves. Back in 2015, a Japanese spacecraft zoomed by and caught this phenomena. Usually clouds there will move around 100 meters a second, but these clouds, these massive ripples, stayed in the same place for 4 days. Way above the ground level also. They were just like, huh? And then they got stuck there. Due to a runaway greenhouse effect, temperatures on Venus hit around 460 degrees Celsius. So this wave may have been powerful enough to change the climate for those 4 days. Pretty crazy. I feel like Canada, we get a lot of weather changes, but this is next level. Kicking off the list at number 10, the largest known comet. Comet Bernardelli-Bernstein. What a name right there. Okay, what a find as well, may I add. June 23rd, 2021, so pretty recently, Pedro Bernardinelli was a grad student and researcher. He was originally observing outer solar system objects like trans-Neptunian objects, stuff like that, but thanks to dark matter, he ended up finding this mega comet instead, which is pretty sweet. He's like, sure, I'll take it, let's look into it. So he went to his advisor, a cosmologist named Gary Bernstein, and he told him to look into it. Like to literally look into it. 10 times wider than a typical comet. This thing is huge. Last time it was near our sun was a good 3 million years ago, and now it's back. Well, in 10 years, it'll be close. So get your wishes ready. All you have to do is say the comet's name 3 times fast, and you're set. Good luck. Bernardinelli-Bernstein, Bernardinelli-Bernstein, Bernardinelli-Bernstein. Yes! That's a hard name to say. I was Googling it, and I'm like, oh man, I love your names. Great observation and all, but actually no, that's great. That's a pretty sick name. I would name a comet my last name. McWaters, easy. Number 9, the unicorn. Not to be confused with Unicron, although both are equally scary, I'd say. The unicorn is the closest black hole to Earth. But don't panic, it's not gonna, turn us into spaghetti anytime soon, so we're good. The unicorn gallops 1,500 light years away from Earth. It's far away, and it's also pretty small. It's a tiny black hole, so it's extremely hard to find. That's why telescopes like James Webb will come in handy, so we can identify more of these little guys. Researchers were able to find the unicorn because a near star, a red giant for that matter, had its light shifting towards something. It's always special when you see sunlight just doing this, just melting towards something. You're like, okay, let's take a look. So they named it the unicorn because it's also tucked away in the unicorn constellation, Monoceros. The fact that it's rare also inspired the name, so yeah, it's a win-win. They're like, unicorn? Wait, can we do this? This is perfect. Also, please don't turn us into spaghetti. Thank you so much. Stay away. Number 8, a new star. Our sun is around 4.5 billion years old. Not that there's anything wrong with that, she's still young at heart, but this new star over here, she's hot. This protostar, during its crazy cosmic birth, jets of gas are now whipping through space at impossible speeds, and it's beautiful. Now we get to look at it and go, wow. Thumbs up. When this material collides with the matter of the still forming star, what's created is called a Herbig-Barrow object. Hubble captured it and it is glorious. We're gonna get even more beautiful shots once James Webb warms up later on this year. So this is really, it's kind of like nothing. Just wait. Number 7, the Veil Nebula. While most subjects on this list are far away from us, the Veil Nebula you can see with a common pair of binoculars on clear conditions. Today we're going with NASA's Hubble telescope view. They got a pretty good look at this gas giant. What you see here is 5 different layers of ionized gases. This cloud is floating around 2,100 light years away. In order to get a photo of the entire nebula, it would be, well, near impossible. See, the Veil Nebula spans 130 light years wide, which is around 100 times larger than our own solar system. So yeah, binoculars ought to do it. You'll see it somewhere. It's pretty big. Number 6, total eclipse. This total eclipse was not of the heart, but it did occur back in December 2021. Not long ago at all. If you didn't see a total eclipse a few months ago, don't worry, we all missed out. I mean, unless you live in Antarctica, we all missed out on this one. This was hard to catch. For a halfway point, I figured I'd throw in a relatable, nice, yet still haunting feature. This Deep Space Climate Observatory satellite snapped a pic, and honestly, it looks like the poster of Independence Day. This is real and very scary. This massive shadow of the moon just slowly moving across the land, like the Goosebumps intro. God, it's haunting to look at. Dark spot on the move, like something out of Star Wars almost. The next total eclipse will occur April 8th, 2024. This time it'll be in Canada, US, and Mexico. All those places will go dark, so get your flashlights ready. I'm already nervous. Number 5, M64. M64, aka the Evil Eye Galaxy, aka the Sleeping Beauty Galaxy, which is a lot nicer. I think we should call it that from now on, definitely. This one might be the coolest space photos of all time. This looks like an artist made it with CGI. I feel like this is concept art from Interstellar. Oh my gosh. What makes the M64 Galaxy so impressive to look at and worthy enough to throw on this terrifying list is the way that it moves. Ooh, the way it moves is just so... Gas on the inner galaxy rotates in one direction, and the outer layer spins the, well, you guessed it, opposite way. This is odd behavior for a galaxy. Scientists theorize that the Evil Eye Galaxy, Sleeping Beauty Galaxy, is the result of two galaxies crashing into one another. The fascinating thing really is we're looking at something 17 million light years away. So this image of the Evil Eye Galaxy, Sleeping Beauty, is actually from a long time ago, most likely. Mind-bending, right? Space is pretty mind-bending. Also terrifying. That's why the James Webb is such a big deal. We're gonna see very far into our past, theoretically. No one really knows what's gonna happen. He's just gonna look and, oh, dinosaurs. Number 4, gamma bursts. Somebody give Bruce Banner a heads up because we got a lot of gamma. We have so much gamma. When we look at extinction level events like, say, I don't know, a meteor smashing into the planet, we can bounce back from that. Humans, evidently. I mean, look at us. We're doing lists now. We're like, hey, subscribe, hit that thumbs up. I mean, sure, we lost some dinosaurs along the way, but millions of years later, we're here, we're popping. But when it comes to gamma rays hitting the planet, yeah, we're not so lucky at that point. We can't bounce back from that one. If a gamma ray happened any time in our past, be it millions of years ago, we still wouldn't be here. Gamma rays happen when stars explode in distant galaxies. See, light and energy then shoots out along with gamma rays, radio waves, neutrinos, just a cosmic cosmo, all that good space stuff, just shook up and then blasted at you. But then these gamma rays would travel light years through space, and if they were to hit Earth, our ozone layer would be toast, just gone forever, just like that. We would be engulfed in chemical smog forever. No bouncing back from that at any point. Or if we did bounce back from it, we'd be lizards or something, you know? We'd be lizard people. Walking around, a bunch of licky dudes, just breathing on people. That'd be okay. Number 3, supernova. For this next one, we'll be looking at Betelgeuse. And no, I don't mean Michael Keaton, although he's pretty scary. I don't want to say it 3 times. I'm keeping count just to be safe. I'm talking about the red giant located in the Orion constellation. It began to dim back in 2019, which is not a great sign. Its decay would be quite noticeable here on Earth. For example, the last time a star went supernova and we were able to observe it, the last time was 1604, and that was the Kepler star. It was beautiful and bright for weeks. Even during the day, we could still see it. All day long, people are like, that's gotta be pretty annoying, huh? Can't wait for that one. But when Betelgeuse finally dims out of existence, you have to wonder if we're far enough to be safe. Which sunscreen is good for solar flares? You know what I'm talking about? Like, I freckle up as is. I'm screwed if this happens. Scientists agree that we need to be much closer for the radiation to actually cause harm, but scientists also tell us quite often about these wandering stars and how black holes will just appear out of nowhere. So who really knows? Betelgeuse. Number 2, the sun. While it's not recommended we stare at it, the sun is pretty beautiful. Living in Canada, we're just now seeing it maybe a little bit, just a tad, fingers crossed. No, not really at all, I guess. It's a terrible idea to look at the sun, especially through a telescope, so we don't recommend that at all. Thankfully, we have photographer Andrew McCarthy to help out. Andrew layered together 150,000 different photos of the sun to create this 300 megapixel image for us to safely look at. I opened this photo on my phone and my phone literally got hot. I was like, wow, this is a great photo. I can actually feel it. It's so nice. Next time you're outside and it's hot, just remember that this scary thing is floating above you. Think of that next time you're getting your tan lines. In order to not go blind or, light any fires in his home, Andrew required a special telescope with numerous filters. So if you're thinking of pointing your phone or telescope at the sun today, just don't do that. It's like the magnifying glass trick with the sun. Yeah, just fires 101. It's all bad. Don't even try. And finally, number 1, James Webb. Our boy James Webb. What's he doing? What's he up to right now? Let's always check out on him. I told you I'd be back with more. While we patiently wait for James Webb to look deeper into our cosmos, I figured I'd leave you on a fun one. Also kind of scary though. Both the James Webb Space Telescope and the European Space Agency's Gaia spacecraft both orbit the Earth and the Sun's Lagrange point 2. So they both drift in between the two space giants, and on February 18th, a month ago, literally, like this was so recent, Gaia actually managed to get an image of James Webb. Just hanging out. Now look, I thought deep sea photos were hard to look at and like scary. This is another level. This is scary. Check it out. Around 930,000 miles away, James Webb just sits there and floats. And he waits to take photos of life and just anything. Just a little photographer, just floating out there. Very little reflected sunlight came Gaia's way, and Webb therefore appears as a tiny faint speck of light in Gaia's 2 telescopes without any details visible. That's the official statement on finding James Webb. They're like, well, it was right there. We saw it. It was just little. This spacecraft also isn't meant to be a telescope, in case you're wondering. It has a sky mapper on board, but the Gaia is originally meant to track celestial objects' positions and distances, all that, technical jargon. Imagine James Webb taking a photo back. It would be so HD. It's like 8K. He's like, turn around. What?
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the after photo. Many of us have seen the portrait of Edwin Buzz Aldrin on the moon. It's an iconic image and has gone on to become one of the most inspiring images of all time, but what we don't see is the one that came immediately after. Maybe it's an arm, maybe it's a chest or a belly, either way it belongs to the taker of the photo, Neil Armstrong. Even the first people on the moon take accidental photos. I mean, it can't be easy in all of that gear. I can't even make a phone call with gloves on. I can't even imagine being in space, trying to snap a selfie while making history. It's nice to see the clean, polished, inspiring part of history, but it's also nice to sometimes remind ourselves that we are all just humans, and humans are silly. In our number 9 spot today, we have the crescent Earth. Less bizarre and more downright artistic and beautiful, truly the only thing that makes this photo bizarre is its lack of popularity, as well as the point of view and how opposite of our own it is. At a first glance, it looks like a photo of the night sky as seen from a sort of piece of space technology, and it looks like the photo captures a sweet crescent moon. While this makes a lot of sense, what we're actually seeing is the Earth as it rises and looms over the Apollo 14 lander. That crescent is Earth. We look like that from the moon. It completely makes sense, it's just something I had failed to think about before. If you were to camp out on the far side of the moon, because the moon and Earth are tidally locked, you wouldn't be able to see Earth. But on the near side of the moon, you'd see the Earth all the time, and through the course of about a month, the Earth would also go through phases just like the moon does, but they'd be the direct opposite of the phases people on Earth would be witnessing the moon going through, if that made any sense at all. I can't believe I had never seen this photo before because it truly is stunning. In our number 8 spot today, we have the moon. This image shows a series of 3 photographs that are just a few of the hundreds taken by the Apollo astronauts. While there are many interesting photos that were taken by those on the Apollo missions, the vast majority of them are just of the moon as seen from their window. Don't get me wrong, seeing photos of the moon up close and personal is magnificent. It's very cool and it's stunning to look at, but once you see it a few dozen times in photos, perhaps the novelty wears off a bit. Of course, the same can't be said for seeing it actually in real life out of the window next to you though. Until travel to the moon becomes a regular old everyday thing like it's a commute to work, that novelty won't ever wear off, as evidenced by the extremely extensive catalog of close-up moon photos taken by the crew. It honestly is kind of nice to see though. To me, astronauts seem so cool and serious and intelligent, and while all of those things likely are very true, they're also giddy, excited humans who were clearly thrilled to be where they were. It's just humanizing, that's all I'm saying. In our number 7 spot today, we have the end of the roll. This is a photo that was taken on the Apollo 7 mission, and while it was likely meant to be just a stunning photo, thank goodness it wasn't meant to include or document anything exceptionally important because, well, the photo is greatly obscured by the end of the roll tape. This photo is hilarious. It appears to be of Earth, and it looks like the photo would show this beautiful white swirl spanning across the blue planet, a beautiful piece of photography, if it weren't for the rectangle taking up a third of the image, right smack dab in the middle. These people are astronauts, not photographers, and despite that, they managed to take some exceptional photos while on their missions, so I think it's fair to cut them some slack for this one. It's not like their thumb was in the way or something like that. In our number 6 spot today, we have the selfie. The word selfie hasn't been around for that long, but people have been taking them for years. With adjustable views and forward-facing cameras, it's definitely gotten a lot easier, but that didn't stop Apollo 17's Ron Evans from having his hand at them, while of course in space. This photo shows about half of Ron, although it's tough to tell with him decked out in his spacesuit. Apparently he snapped this photo while he was retrieving exposed film from outside of the spacecraft. I think that means he was in the midst of a spacewalk when he snapped this selfie. That is perhaps the most badass selfie of all time. On the way back to Earth near the end of the mission, Evans did a 1 hour and 6 minute long spacewalk, so it's entirely possible that this is exactly where this photo is from. I mean, that would explain the absolute nothingness that can be seen behind him. In our number 5 spot today, we have number 2. When we hear about space missions, we often hear of the grueling work and preparations, or perhaps the science and mathematics that went into the planning, or maybe we're just there for the cool photos and interesting discoveries. But whatever it is, we normally don't hear about, either from reports or the astronaut themselves, is how on Earth they managed to use the facilities while flying through space and living in zero gravity. Well, thanks to Apollo 17, some of the mysteries surrounding it were unveiled, although this photo didn't exactly go viral. The final, for now, mission to the moon had those on board snapping shots of the plastic bags that were filled with their space pee. Also, note the device used to help collect it that is located at the top of the bag. Yeah, that little thing was actually cited as the reason women couldn't serve in the Apollo space program. You're telling me that NASA could figure out how to send people to the moon, but it was too difficult at the time to figure out the female anatomy and how a woman could pee in space? Okay, it's a little suspicious at best. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Mars eclipse. So this is more of a video rather than one single image. Well, actually it's a series of 89 different images that, when strung together, act like a video, but I digress. It was all captured by NASA's Curiosity rover as it showed us insights into what life is like on Mars. So on Earth, we have this weird coincidence that the distance ratio between the Earth and the Moon versus the Earth and the Sun is almost the same as the size ratio between the Moon and the Sun. This is why, when the Moon passes in front of the Sun for a total eclipse, it covers it completely. On other planets, namely Mars, that's not what happens. When one of the moons of Mars passes in front of the Sun, it's much smaller and it appears like this. Curiosity was able to observe a ton of these instances, which are called transits, from two moons, Phobos and Deimos. It's just really strange to see how things that the average person wouldn't have necessarily thought about are so completely different on other planets. Of course it makes sense and it's perfectly logical, it's just strange to see it right in front of your eyes and really take a second to think about it. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Ceres. This is a series of photographs that were taken on the Apollo 17 mission. The first in the series is another photo that has gone down in history as one of the most iconic. A photo of our beautiful planet as seen from space. I mean, come on, how stunning! We are so lucky to have this as our home. The next photo followed up the last iconic one, and while still interesting, it definitely leaves a little something to be desired. It's a simple photo of a floating engine stage. Still cool, just not as cool as the Earth one. The next photo, however, is when things go a little awry. It appears as though the next photo is someone's failed attempt at photographing the sun. It's so funny. It's just white. No one can see a thing. It's exactly what anyone would do, and I love it. The final photo in the series has whoever took the photos returning back to snap some shots of Earth. I guess they likely didn't realize that the one they already had was better than anyone could have imagined. In our number 2 spot today, we have Mimas. This is a photo that my brain can't even begin to comprehend as real. It's a photo of one of Saturn's moons called Mimas. This moon just so happens to have a 130-kilometer wide crater on it that is called Herschel. This is cool and interesting and makes this moon look absolutely fascinating, but this photo caught by the Cassini spacecraft in 2005 really brings it to a whole new level. As the sun lit up the Herschel crater, the spacecraft caught this image where we can actually see the rings of Saturn in the background. Firstly, Saturn has at least 83 moons, so snapping such a gorgeous picture of one isolated one probably isn't the easiest thing in the world, especially for a spacecraft. Secondly, some of the moons are huge. Like, the biggest of them all, Titan, is bigger than the planet Mercury. It's less massive, and I know Mercury isn't a huge planet, but still, that's pretty huge for a moon, but I guess that isn't surprising considering the size of Saturn. The rings of Saturn are mostly comprised of ice particles with smaller amounts of rocky debris and dust, and it's exceptionally interesting to see how they look even when you're up close. This photo probably isn't that bizarre, but it certainly is spectacular. And yes, you're not alone if you're sitting there thinking that this moon looks a heck of a lot like a Death Star. In our number 1 spot today, we have Alone. No, this isn't a photo from space thriller Gravity, which stars Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, but if you haven't seen it, it's a great movie and I would highly recommend it. Not necessarily the most scientifically accurate movie, but definitely anxiety-inducing. Anyway, back to the photo. This is actually a photo of NASA astronaut Bruce McCandless in 1984. I have no idea how I hadn't seen this photo ever before, as it clearly shows Bruce just roaming free from the Space Shuttle Challenger. No, obviously it wasn't the one that exploded. I had the same thought. They're different. I looked it up. He was able to do this thanks to a nitrogen-powered jetpack, which was called the Manned Maneuvering Unit, and it actually led to him being the first person to ever do a spacewalk untethered. Quite possibly the coolest and one of the most brave things ever. Like, I'd want to do it so bad, but would I risk the possibility of endlessly floating till I met a horrific death once my supplies ran out? Probably not. Bruce had some interesting things to say about the experience, however, saying, quote, "I was grossly overtrained. I was just anxious to get out there and fly. I felt very comfortable. It got so cold my teeth were chattering and I was shivering, but that was a very minor thing. I'd been told of the quiet vacuum you experience in space, but with 3 radio links saying, 'How's your oxygen holding out? Stay away from the engines,' and 'When's my turn?' It wasn't that peaceful. It was a wonderful feeling, a mix of personal elation and professional pride. It had taken many years to get to that point."
Number 10, Zombie Star. While the idea of a human coming back to life and hunting for brains is spooky, to me the knowledge that dead stars can do the same, even the eating each other part, is both scary and exciting. This is Tycho, a former white dwarf, which is a star that has, quote, died and gone supernova, exploding into a fantastic show of cosmic energy and matter with the power and brightness of a billion suns. And usually a white dwarf will stay dead, but not in a binary system where there's more than one star at the center. Sometimes these previously deceased stars can come back to life, and they do this by feeding off the energy and material from their neighboring star and powering themselves back up, not unlike a zombie eating somebody's brains. Scientists believe that this may have to do with what they call dark energy as well, which theoretically makes up about 3/4 of our universe, but since we have yet to truly detect or understand it, these zombie stars will remain a mystery. But they look super cool, right? Number 9, Alien Bones. Captured on August 14th, 2014 by the Curiosity rover, this photo appears to show something on the surface of Mars that could chill you to the bone, a femur on the surface of the red planet. Many conspiracy theorists and alien enthusiasts alike hopped onto this to show it as proof that there was once life on Mars, or even that humans had been there before on some sort of secret mission that went awry. NASA has gone on the record to say that it's not a thigh bone, but just a rock that happened to be shaped that way after erosion from wind or water, which we have proven existed at one point. But come on. If it really was a bone, do you think that they'd tell us? Though I'm inclined to go with the scientists on this one, it would be kinda cool if we had proof of aliens on Mars. If you think there are aliens out there, hit the like and subscribe buttons to help us bring you the most amazing videos on them. Number 8, Eye of Sauron. The Rings of Power just finished its first season as I'm recording this video, and since I still have Tolkien on the brain, this photo of the Fomalhaut system made the cut. A relatively young system at 440 million years old. For comparison, our sun is about 4.5 billion years old. Fomalhaut and its surrounding disk of space dust have been the subject of a lot of controversy in the astronomical community. The images captured interest scientists not only because they look like they came straight from Mordor, but because of the zombie planet that has been tricky to find. The photos taken show that the dust ring is not centered around the star, but is shifted and elongated into the eye shape, which indicates something of large mass on the outer parts of the system, which scientists believed could be a Saturn-sized planet. Investigations have been conflicting over the past few years, with researchers believing on and off that the planet exists, and with Hubble images being inconclusive, which is why we call it a zombie planet, because it keeps coming back to life in a way amongst researchers. The system may have gotten its strange ring shape from all of the comet activity as well, with over 2,000 comet impacts daily, many of those comets being over 1 kilometer wide. That would definitely kick up a lot of dust, so one does not simply walk into Fomalhaut. Number 7. Sunken. Okay, I threw this one in because it's currently spooky season while I record this, and having a jack-o'-lantern sun on the list couldn't be passed up. In 2014, the Solar Dynamics Observatory captured this creepy photo of the sun smiling right at us, like its features had been carved right out of a pumpkin. Solar flares and activity on the sun can be quite unpredictable, and the fact that it lined up to look like this is pretty cool. I just hope that there isn't some giant alien up there carving into our sun to decorate their intergalactic porch. But if that's the case, what are we gonna dress up Earth as? If Earth had a Halloween costume, what would it be? Let me know in the comments. Number 6. Greater pumpkin galaxies. Sticking with the Halloween theme, 120 million light years away in the Canis Major constellation, these two galaxies, called NGC 2292 and 2293, have earned a much cooler name, the Greater Pumpkin Galaxies. Because of their orange color and the fact that they look like a jack-o'-lantern, these galaxies doomed to collide in what we will see as slow motion make for a pretty spectacular image. Not to mention that NASA released the photos on Halloween a few years ago. Though it may be a fun Halloween-themed image, there is a scary truth about them. They're on track to collide with each other. And as the two galaxies draw closer, they begin to spin around one another and could eventually form one single spiral galaxy. But when that happens, there will be some cosmic consequences. Things smashing into each other at ludicrous speeds and exploding out into the darkness with the force of many nuclear bombs. But we don't actually know what will happen until it does. While some may say it reminds them of the Great Pumpkin, I would say that it looks more like a 100,000 light year across Jack Skellington. Number 5. The face of Mars. This freaky famous photo was taken by the Viking 1 orbiter in 1976 and shows us what is very clearly a face embedded in the surface of Mars. A massive one at that, judging by the scale of what's around it. It very clearly has 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Uncanny, really, especially for being what NASA has called a cosmic coincidence, because with enough time and space, literally anything can happen. When investigated again in 2001 with a better camera, it was not to be seen. Was it just a mound of rocks and dirt that was blown or moved away, or was it something more sinister, watching us from the red planet, not knowing that we were finally looking back? Number 4. Black hole in the Milky Way. Black holes, one of the biggest driving forces in the cosmos. These places of pure darkness were once stars that shone bright in the sky, but when they died, instead of going supernova and exploding into a blast of color and energy, they collapsed in on themselves, creating a singularity so dense that it sucks everything around it in, with a force that nothing can escape, not even light. And while this may sound scary, they are incredibly necessary for our understanding of the universe to function. In fact, there are a few in our galaxy, but the biggest is Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way. This is the second image ever captured of a black hole, and it's insane that we've developed the technology to be able to find and photograph them. Sag A sits at the center of our galaxy and is the reason why it spins and has its signature spiral shape. But the scary part is that it is not only spinning our galaxy, but consuming it, adding one more way that our galaxy can meet its demise. Not sure I'd rather that or colliding with another galaxy. Either way, none of us are going to be around to see it. Number 3. Hand of God. This is what's known as a pulsar wind nebula, and what you're seeing is a cloud of material that was ejected from a dying star, captured by X-ray telescopes functioning at different energy levels, lower energy detections appearing in red and green, and higher ones in blue. While we can explain what this stellar specter is made of, we can't quite figure out why it takes the shape it does, and NASA is still wondering if the pulsar particles are interacting in a specific way to make it look like a hand. When the new readings were taken, the ones appearing blue, they realized that one part of the hand is actually shrinking at a different speed than the rest, implying that the two areas were physically different, and making us all wonder what the hand is reaching towards. Number 2. Ghost Nebula. Known formally as SH2-136, really rolls off the tongue. This reflection nebula has some pretty startling shapes appearing within it. A reflection nebula does exactly what you think. It reflects light from nearby stars and galaxies. The energy from stars nearby is not strong enough to ionize the gas of the nebula, but it is enough to illuminate the dust and make it visible to us. Looking at the picture, it's a no-brainer why it's earned its much cooler name, the Ghost Nebula. You can see little figures waving from the edge of the space cloud. They even appear to have horns. I'm not sure what that's about, but I'm here for it. Give me all the spooky space specters. Again, this is just one of those cosmic coincidences that we can't explain, and that if we we existed at any other place in the universe we may not see. So we're pretty lucky, I guess. But let's hope our luck holds out for our final entry. Number 1, roaming black holes. Now, I told you about black holes, those things that suck in and destroy anything that comes near, even light, with no chance to escape. But they are pretty detectable, and we should be able to avoid them since they're such a huge cosmic entity, right? Well, what if I told you that there are many out there that are near impossible to detect, because they're moving? That's right. Known as roaming black holes, these death spheres fly through our universe, devouring everything in their path. Only detectable by fluctuations in mass and light, they were most likely two black holes that attracted each other, then slingshotted off one another and were flung out into space. But here's the kicker. The Hubble telescope actually detected one closer than anyone would want, in our own Milky Way. While pointed near the center of the galaxy at Sagittarius A, a fluctuation in light and space shows that we may have one of these devouring our galaxy, and we would never see it coming until it was too late. So there you go, one of my, and possibly now one of your fears, roaming black holes. Space is crazy and terrifying. It is absolutely baffling and will never cease to impress me the technology and knowledge we have developed in our time as a species to investigate beyond our own planet, especially since at the end of the day, we're all just monkeys with car keys.
Number 10, lost habitable world. Remember in 2020 when we casually discovered phosphine on Venus? And we talked about it for like 4 business days and then went back to normal? Yeah, in the middle of 2020 of all times, data from 40 years ago resurfaced. Documents from an old NASA mission where they may have overlooked this phosphine. Yeah, whoops, didn't see that quick sign of life there. Yeah, our bad, oops. This compound of phosphorus and hydrogen, this is eye-opening, but what's next at this point? Well, NASA is currently preparing to launch 2 new missions to Venus. This is part of NASA's Discovery program they're launching in 2030, so something to look forward to, dare I say. The Da Vinci Plus and the Verita S. The first is a deep atmosphere Venus investigation of noble gases, chemistry and imaging, hence Da Vinci. Then the second will map Venus's surface, studying its geologic history, and hopefully we'll get an understanding to what happened to such a lost habitable world, as NASA puts it. I don't want to find bones of like humans and stuff, that's scary. Number 9, carbon on Mars. It's one thing to have Elon tweeting about going to Mars, but when NASA talks about it, I get an eerie feeling, you know? NASA's old school. They're like, oh, we may have found carbon 40 years ago. We don't know. Papers everywhere. It's so NASA to have papers all over the place. So old school. Well, in 2022, just back in January, believe it or not, NASA's Curiosity rover measured carbon signatures on Mars. This is exciting. Paul Mahaffey, principal investigator of the sample analysis at Mars, he says, quote, "We're finding things on Mars that are tantalizingly interesting." Tantalizingly, good word. But we would really need more evidence to say we've identified life. End quote. Okay, so we're close. It seems like we're close. You're saying we're close, right? Side note, imagine going on a Willy Wonka trip to Mars with Elon. Like, who's actually gonna go on this thing? I would pay not to go. How does that sound? No way. I can't do wooden roller coasters, let alone a rocket ship. Number 8, Europa Cryobot. We talk about Jupiter's moon Europa quite often, and there's reason. We found traces of water on the icy shell of the moon, which is fascinating in general because, well, water in space. We love that. All signs point to aliens, if that's the case. But the part that really has NASA's attention is the tectonic activity beneath the icy shell, meaning that somewhere in the middle there could be warm water flowing. Yeah, imagine finding a solar space spa. That'd be nice and relaxing. One of the only ways to get a look under that shell of ice and find out is by using Valkyrie. Yeah, Valkyrie's great. She's a chirobot that NASA created specifically for this mission. This machine is capable of melting through layers and layers of ice. A prototype was actually tested in Alaska and the results were promising. This chirobot is capable of crawling through 8 kilometers of ice a year. Awesome, that's great. Can't wait to meet Atlanteans in 2040. Let's do it. Plenty to look forward to. Practice my alien handshake now. Or do we do like a hug thing? You never know. Even in space, you never know. Number 7, Abel and Baker. We often remember Laika, the space dog, and her, 103-minute cosmic journey aboard Sputnik 2. God rest her soul. But does anybody remember Abel and Baker? Why don't we talk about them? What's going on? This was the American version of Laika. This was less than 2 years later. This was May 28th, 1959. The United States launched a female rhesus monkey named Abel and a female squirrel monkey named Baker. just launched them into space. This mission lasted 15 minutes and they both safely returned back home, which is great news. The monkeys were not injured from the trip at all, or so they say, although they were whipping through space at 10,000 miles an hour. It's pretty impressive. Reminder, this was 1959. This was when space travel became the real deal. This is now a possibility. Abel sadly passed away after the flight. Meanwhile, Baker got famous. Yeah, she was getting letters, 150 letters a day, supposedly. I'm talking fan mail to a monkey. That's great, right? These ladies are icons. Never mind Laika. Hit that thumbs up for Baker, you know? She made this list possible. Number 6, asteroid redirection. Okay, this has Michael Bay written all over it. I'm pretty excited for this project, I'm not gonna lie. I can't even catch a baseball with my bare hands. How the hell is NASA gonna catch an asteroid hurling through space? Let's break this science down. NASA landing on an asteroid is one thing, but their asteroid redirection mission is just next level, honestly. The plan is for NASA to catch an asteroid using hypothetically a large space inflatable. And no, I'm not joking, just a big floaty in space. They're gonna go poof and just catch it. Yeah, and then they're gonna move said asteroid to the moon where it would then orbit for further studies. Yeah, we want to adopt a rock and then gently have astronauts land on it and then study the moon. Is this 2099? Is this possible? How are we here? This is crazy. We can't figure out women's rights, but we can catch an asteroid in space. Number 5, NASA's Gateway. Sounds interesting already, doesn't it? No, it's not teleportation. Don't get too excited. NASA's Gateway is the next big space station that's going to be flying around our heads every day. And they're partnering up with other international agencies, so it's quite a big deal. The US Habitat, that's the final piece to this floating science center. The US Habitat is set to be delivered sometime in 2025, allowing 4 astronauts to begin studying on board the station. Science that could get us even closer to Mars, which is scary. I think it's fascinating, but I think it's pretty scary. Where are we going? Why are we leaving? What's up? Say everyone's leaving? Like, what's going on? Like, this is NASA going to Mars, and then this is Elon going to Mars. Number 4, Psych. If you play No Man's Sky, this next one will have you itching, my friends. Here we go. My gamer friends, this is for you. NASA has a $1 billion mission that was supposed to launch this year, but it faced delays in completing software verification testing for the craft's navigation, so ironically, Psych had us all psyched out. It didn't happen. It will now launch in 2023. Or 2024, one of the two, depending on the next best launch period. You know, space, they're like, now, wait. Now, we gotta wait. It's really hard to time stuff out in space. But once they arrive, hypothetically, this asteroid is believed to be a massive nickel core of a protoplanet. Just a big chunk of nickel floating through space, one of the biggest asteroids in our belt. So whenever NASA does arrive, after a 4-year commute of course, it sounds like it's gonna be worth the wait. I'll get up there, I'll start shoveling some nickel. Some hot space nickel, there we go. Number 3, Titan Dragonfly. This mission is set to launch in 2026. This one could change things, for real. Saturn has a plethora of moons, just like Jupiter, and like the latter, these moons are capable of holding the secrets to life. Possibly. Once the rotor craft arrives on Titan, much later in 2034, it will then fly around and study the moon's environment. Yeah, how amazing is that? This is so Dune. This mission is set to last almost 3 years, so whatever it does find could potentially crack the code to how life on Earth here evolved in the first place. This beast of a rotorcraft is expected to travel to dozens of locations and search for prebiotic chemical processes. Aliens. It's a nice way of saying they're looking for aliens. More of, oh, what's that? More of these guys. Number 2, the fallen astronaut. This isn't a space mission per se, but it is something that happened in space and not a lot of people know about it. And it's certainly not something I knew about before this, so let's talk. The fallen astronaut is an aluminum sculpture that was meant to depict an astronaut in a spacesuit. The piece was commissioned and placed on the actual moon by the crew of Apollo 15. This was back on August 1st, 1971. It is next to a plaque that lists the 14 names of the men who died, and the entire thing is meant to be a tribute and to commemorate the astronauts and cosmonauts who died in the advancement of space exploration. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful tribute. This wasn't cleared prior to being done, but you know, I think the important thing is that it was done. I don't think anyone's getting in trouble for having this secret, lovely personal mission on the moon, you know? No one's getting slapped on the wrist for this one. Those explorers were brave and brilliant, and they of course deserve to be commemorated in the best way. On the moon itself. Couldn't imagine a more peaceful place. And finally, number 1, Artemis 1. Artemis 1 is a planned uncrewed test flight that's part of NASA's Artemis program. The Artemis program is a United States-led international human spaceflight program. Basically, the goal is to put humans back on the moon, because yeah, that was kind of fun, right, when we were doing that? More specifically on the South Pole area of the moon. The aim is to have humans there by 2025, and if this is successful, it would be the first crewed lunar landing since Apollo 17 back in 1972. So yeah, it's about time we head back, I think. Artemis 1 was expected to launch in February 2022, but now it's launching in August 2022 instead. This mission will be the first flight of the Orion MPCV, and it will be the certification for the Orion spacecraft as well as the Space Launch System launch vehicle to see if they're ready for crewed flights. Basically, it's important. It's a big test that they can't screw up. Let's fingers crossed. If all goes well, crewed flights will begin with the second flight test, Artemis 2, of course with humans. That's pretty exciting. I want to end on a hopeful note, you know? I went from like Laika and launching monkeys out into space. I'm like, hey, you know what? We're going back to the moon. Isn't that fun? Kicking off the list at number 10, Black Hole Secrets. This one I'm extremely excited for, and you should be as well. Only a couple of weeks ago, NASA launched a mission to measure X-rays released by black holes and neutron stars. Sounds pretty scientific and nerdy. X-rays are extremely powerful, but we can only do so much with Earth's atmosphere standing in the way. That's where science comes in. We'll just blast an X-ray out of there. Boom, problem solved. 190 million, debit, bop. It'll go on a 2-year mission, seeing the universe in ways that we never have before. We'll finally see what's going on with these high energy events, like stars exploding or the birth of black holes, rapid rotations, extreme temperatures. Everything in these X-rays will tip us off to their origin, which is vital when it comes to something like a black hole, something we already know nothing about. Polarized light only vibrates in one direction, whereas light, our light, vibrates in any direction. We're narrowing this cosmic puzzle down one piece at a time, and it's pretty exciting, but like I said, definitely terrifying. Number 9, Voyager 1. We've looked at Saturn in awe more so than the other planets because of its rings. Maybe it's the 2008 Beyonce classic Single Ladies, but we love rings, still to this day. Since 1610, we've known about Saturns, and it stood out ever since Galileo brought this headline to town. Its many moons get hit by many meteors, and the dust and ice that follows orbits the giant. But it wasn't until 1979 until we discovered that Jupiter also has rings. Small, but mighty. That discovery came after the Voyager 1 passed Jupiter, but it also discovered 2 new Jovian moons. So far, this flyby is treating us quite well, but it only gets better. Only gets better. Once Voyager 1 got to Saturn, it found 5 new moons and an entirely new ring called the G-ring. As of 2012, Voyager 1 has been in interstellar space, so only time will tell what's really out there. I'm terrified. Are we in a simulation? Probably. Number 8, the new telescope. Since we launched the Hubble telescope back in April 1990, it's been a key asset in these groundbreaking discoveries. We've been able to predict the age of the universe, roughly, and we found moons around Pluto. Since the mission began back in 1990, Hubble has made over 1 million observations. It can literally see our past, as it shows us things 13 billion light years away. That's why this new telescope launching later this month can literally rewrite history. This is the most expensive space instrument to ever be flown or launched away from us. It's 100 times more powerful than Hubble, which is insane after you really think about what we've done with it. The James Webb telescope will let us see back to the creation of the universe. So keep your notifications on for a bit, because we might be in a simulation after all. We actually don't know. What do you think's out there? Just more space, more planets? Are we inside of a body like Osmosis Jones? I have no idea. I literally don't know. Number 7, the ISS. Ah yes, that time humans launched a science center into space. We love it. We still see it. I see it once a night. It's beautiful. Are astronauts still there? Do we use it? Yes and yes. We actually just grew peppers up there for the first time ever. There's lots happening. Back in 1998, the United States and Russia launched the first 2 pieces to the International Space Station, the ISS. Pieces were added over time, more and more, until come November 2000, it was now complete. In 2018, legislation was also approved to extend operations until 2030. So every time you see a bright ball of light slowly pass over your head, it might be a bunch of scientists eating space tacos. Literally, it's probably that. Number 6, Explorer 1. Long before NASA was even NASA, in fact, back in the Jet Propulsion Laboratory days, tests were underway to follow the recent Sputnik satellite into the cosmos. Where are the Russians going? I don't know, but we're gonna follow them. Cut to a few months later, Explorer 1 was ready for its first day at space school. NASA's first mission was to study the cosmic rays in Earth's orbit. Pretty low key compared to what we're doing now. I mean, Elon Musk just launched a car out there because he's like, on board. The cosmic ray activity was actually so much lower than anticipated, so much so that scientists actually sent out another satellite 2 months later. Physicist James Van Allen believed that there was something interfering with the satellite cosmic ray detector, so once the second satellite was in the picture, literally, that theory was backed up. And this introduced us to the Van Allen radiation belts. Imagine getting radiation belts named after you, that'd be awesome. Just Taylor radiation. It's not as cool. Number 5, the space shuttle. Kinda hard to walk on the moon without getting a ride there first, am I right? In 1972, the Apollo program started to slow down and the bills were starting to come in. These Apollo rockets were of course single use, but they were expensive. We're literally just throwing money into the universe. New reusable spacecraft was underway. Richard Nixon announced this new spacecraft, just literally 2 rocket boosters attached to an orbiter module with an external fuel tank, and it took them 9 years to figure it out, and come 1981, the shuttle Columbia lifted off. Our first reusable space shuttle, that was soon followed by 4 others: Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour. Many of these combined 135 missions included a pit stop or 2 at the International Space Station. It all comes together. Number 4, Apollo 13. April 11th, 1970, Apollo 13 was heading for the moon. On board the ship was astronauts James Lovell, John Swigert, and Fred Hayes. 46 hours after takeoff, there was an explosion that damaged the shuttle drastically. Every system to keep the astronauts alive and well were no longer operational. The second oxygen tank thermostat had been damaged long before the launch, and since its blast-off, these astronauts had little to no chance of coming home. There's actually a movie about this entire thing, and it's a wild ride. You have to watch it. A Tom Hanks classic. Their power supply, their water, their oxygen, heat, light, everything was just cut off. They had lost over 30 pounds combined as a unit when they got back. It was horrible. The people at NASA's Mission Control Center, they had to do months worth of calculations in only a few days. Instead of going to the moon, they had to figure out a way to use its pull and then just return these guys as quickly and as safely as possible back to Earth. Number 3, Perseverance. Only 140 million miles away, Mars is pretty similar to Earth. Only its days last 37 minutes longer, and they're definitely a little colder than ours here. Maybe not in Canada, I don't know, it's a cold one today. It's home to not 1 but 2 moons, and its atmosphere is primarily CO2 with some nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, and oxygen. 2020 will go down, of course, as one of the worst years in all of our lives, but off-planet over on Mars, it was a little more hopeful. The Mars 2020 mission was launched on July 30th, and finally, this past February, it landed. The team sent this rover up, Perseverance, which was a cosmic Trojan horse essentially. It was loaded. This thing had an ultralight spectrometer, panoramic cameras, subsurface radars, weather station, and perhaps the most interesting, it had a helicopter, a little drone. Lovely. Like a little Decepticon, just released a then it flew away. Ingenuity hitched a ride, and come April 19th, 2021, we have our first flight on Mars. Look at it go. So small. A little bit different than when the Wright brothers had to, run their way into the skies. Now we're here. Number 2, dead galaxies. The universe is about 13 billion years old, and new research from NASA using the Hubble Space Telescope along with the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array in northern Chile, they both combined their powers and they found 6 different dead galaxies. Yeah, galaxies that had run out of the cold hydrogen needed to make these stars, and without the fuel for stars, these galaxies were basically running on nothing. Which is interesting if you're a scientist, and also if you're not one, because already you're like, what? These things can die? This discovery led us to a new question that we didn't even know we had. What led these galaxies to die? What happened to all the cold gas in them so early on? These 6 galaxies lived fast, hot lives, but we aren't really sure what went wrong. Lead author and assistant professor at astronomy of University of Massachusetts, Kate Whitaker, she proposed several potential explanations and gives us insight into the future of the studies when she says, did a massive super black hole in the galaxy's center turn on and heat up all the gas? If so, the gas could still be there, but now it's hot. Or could it have been expelled and now it's being prevented from going back onto the galaxy? Or did the galaxy just use up all this power and now the supply is just cut off? These are some of the crazy questions that people are asking. Meanwhile, I'm like, where's my phone charger? I haven't seen it in 30 minutes. And finally, number 1, solar flares. We literally revolve around our sun and its heat. It blesses us with life energy, solar rotation, and most importantly, some sweet tan lines. But sometimes she acts up and gets a little scary, to say the least. Sometimes the sun creates these powerful magnetic fields that create sunspots larger than our entire planet. Yeah, I can't even think of that right now. I can't even fathom. This creates a stream of radiation. It creates solar wind. Now, normally this is a beautiful event. The northern lights happen because of Earth's magnetic field reacting to this radiation. But too much of a good thing can be just disaster. Back in October, a large solar flare was spotted, and then 3 days later, it finally hit Earth. The geomagnetic storm reached category G2, which out of 5 is still pretty strong. The biggest solar event was back in 1859. It's called the Carrington event. It was strong enough to disrupt telegraph communications, even shocking some telegraph operators. Imagine that, imagine calling your friend and the power goes out and you get zapped through your phone. We were looking at power outages on a massive scale. If this happened now, people would lose their shit. Right in the middle of Spider-Man No Way Home, bam, blackout. Life as we know it is now meaningless. Is the Green Goblin back? I don't know, we couldn't tell you.
Number 10, contractor. A former NASA contractor went on video to reveal the fact that NASA has been keeping secrets from us. She says she both viewed and heard evidence that 3 NASA astronauts said that they had seen unidentified flying objects land on the moon, but that these events were later covered up in an operation that was codenamed Santa Claus, a fitting name as NASA wants you to believe that UFOs are just about as real as Santa. She says that she had clearance to enter Building 8 at NASA's Johnson Space Center back in the 1970s. She says that she received information over lunch from officials that if anyone was ever caught exposing aliens as real, they would lose their pensions, and apparently one person in the past had not only lost their pension, but had disappeared off the face of the earth. In the video, she said, "They didn't threaten to kill me, but I got the message I shouldn't talk about it." She apparently witnessed everything from employees being forced to burn photographic evidence and seeing official pictures being airbrushed to hide UFOs. Number 9, the Kecksburg File. On the night of December 9th, 1965, a giant fireball which caused a sonic boom streaked across the sky before crashing into the woods in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Military immediately arrived and sealed off the area, hauling off a massive object the size of a bus to their Air Force base nearby in Ohio. The Pentagon immediately tried to cover it up, saying it was a meteorite, releasing no details about the incident. But in 2003, NASA went on to say that it was not a satellite, but 2 years later in 2005, they said, yeah, actually it was a satellite, just don't worry about it. The cover-up seemed never ending, and it just led more and more people to become interested in finding out the truth of the Kecksburg File. A Freedom of Information Act was then started to get the file looked into again, and the judge threw away NASA's attempts to have the lawsuit thrown out. So in 2007, they announced they would be reopening the Kecksburg File, but they claimed that a majority of the files had been destroyed or lost, and they never released what it actually was that crashed that day. Number 8, astronaut. Like I said in the first point, there is allegedly a conspiracy within NASA to cover up any of their employees or former employees talking about the fact that they have had alien experiences. But as I have mentioned in other parts of this list, there are actually a handful of astronauts who have spoken out about potentially alien encounters. Leland Melvin is probably best known for taking his astronaut photos with his rescued dogs, but what you're probably not familiar with is the fact that he has shared his alien experiences on Twitter. He received a question on Twitter that read, "What's your outlook about the existence of intelligent alien life living in our solar system? Have you ever witnessed a UFO?" And Leland went on to respond with, "I have not seen one in space or on the ground, but thought I saw something organic/alien-like floating out of the payload bay. Randy Bresnick and I called the ground to ask what it could be, and they said it was ice that had broken off of the Freon hoses. Translucent, curved, organic looking, with an alien emoji at the end. Of course, he explains it by saying it was just ice, but that was probably just NASA feeding them an easy cover-up. Number 7, moon crash. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is similar to the Mars Orbiter that I have talked about before. It basically watches over the moon and takes pictures of its surface. Earlier this year, they released a photo that had many people scratching their heads and insisting that NASA was doing yet another cover-up. The photo shows the surface of the moon with what is called a double impact crater. While the moon is covered in tons of craters, this one is unique for this reason. The evidence of the dozens of feet wide indentation seems to show that some sort of man-made spaceship crashed into the moon and left the divot. Many people on social media believe this to be evidence that some sort of alien craft had hit the moon, but NASA tried to shut everyone up by claiming it was just an out-of-control rocket. While they seem to know it was a rocket, they admitted that they don't have any idea where it came from or what its original path was intended to be. So even if it's not aliens, it's still pretty confusing. Number 6, alien photo. Mars is one of the main planets that many people believe could be host to aliens. Hence the term Martians and all the fictitious media media that includes alien creatures visiting from Mars. On February 4th of this year, one person online dug up a photo that the Perseverance rover had taken on Mars back in 2021. The title of the blog post being, "Alien Figure Watching Mars Rover, 100% Proof of Life UFO Sighting News." The image seems to show a dark figure laying on a large Martian rock. It's distinctly human-shaped and darkly colored and stands out from anything else in the area or what we've seen in previous pictures. The man explains in his blog post everything that he believes it to be. There is a person laying down watching the NASA Mars rover from a safe distance away. The person is about 1 foot tall, 0.3 meters, and is lying down. Pinkish upper chest, neck and face, reddish hair, wearing a dark suit, but has a gray object over one shoulder. Looks like a backpack of some sort. There are even footprints behind the person leading up to the location they chose to lay down at. If you don't agree with that, then what do you think it could be? Number 5. Mercury UFO. Project Mercury was NASA's first ambitious space mission, which took place back in the early 1960s, which included 6 manned space flights. But that isn't what we're going to be focusing on. One of the Mercury probes sent out into space took a picture of what appears to clearly be a UFO. A photo that a NASA blogger found in an old disk from the mission that took place in December 1960 appears to show a strange shape that looks like it could be an alien spacecraft. While many arguments against UFOs are that they're just random space junk, this was at the beginning of NASA's steps out into space, so there really couldn't have been that many rocket pieces and broken panels floating around. The blogger says that he believes this is aliens wanting to watch one of humanity's biggest steps, not worrying about being seen because this particular craft didn't actually have any humans on it. Number 4. Deleted UFO. This same blogger also recently found evidence of NASA purposefully covering up and deleting archival photos that appear to show evidence of aliens. He found a photo of what appears to be a large, dark, rectangular alien ship flying past the sun, and he also found that NASA is trying to hide it. On his blog, he said, "I found a huge rectangle UFO shooting past our sun, and it's got to be several miles across or more. I tried to find it on another NASA site, but I got an error message. Then I tried using official European Space Administration software, and again, error message. Then I went into the individual photos online and input my own URL, but these photo times do not exist. That's 3 different sources all erased from existence. I found it at a 4th source." He says that he won't reveal this other source as he doesn't want it taken down as well. There are 20 different photos in a row that all show the unidentified craft, and he calls NASA out for never saying anything about it. Number 3. Mars photos. I talked about this on a separate list, but I also wanted to touch on it here too. We've taken a look at one Mars rover photo already, but I want to dive into just how many of these there are. People are constantly picking out unexplained and potentially alien things popping up in these photos of the red planet. One of the most baffling recent images is this one that appears to show some sort of carved out entryway which people believe must lead to some sort of alien hideout on the planet, looking too precise to have been caused by natural weather and environment conditions like NASA claims. There have also been many rocks that appear to be much more than just rocks, as they stand out from anything else in the photos, almost looking like a sort of coral growing out from the ground through the dust. There are a lot of them, and NASA has attempted to explain away all these photos, but there is still just a lot of mystery there. Number 2. The Calvine photo. This one is similar to the Kecksburg file in the way that it is also a UFO encounter from many decades ago that NASA tried to hide away by claiming it was lost. The photo was taken in August 1990 by 2 hikers near Calvine in Scotland. It shows what is clearly a large diamond-shaped vessel flying through the sky, being trailed by another airplane. They took pictures and said it appeared to be about 30 meters long. It apparently then shot straight up into the sky and disappeared, never to be seen again. The photo was first given to the newspaper and then handed over to the Ministry of Defense, and then it was never discussed again, and the photo apparently went missing. In October of 2021, the Scottish Operations Records book was checked, and there was no account of anything having been spotted in the sky on that day. One determined individual, however, managed to track down the lost photo, and about it they said, "The Calvine photograph stands as one of the biggest mysteries in UFO history. Finally revealed after 32 years, it shows that answers only bring new questions." Number 1. Space nudes. In May of this year, it was revealed to the public that NASA was going to be sending a message out to aliens calling it the beacon in the galaxy. It's a binary coded message that includes details about our planet and human life that is going to be shot into space for anybody to find. One of these images was revealed to be an image of what a genetically male and female human look like, and yes, it has all the details. It also includes a diagram of gravity so aliens know which part of us is the top and which is the bottom. Other images included are the solar system diagram, a map of Earth's landmass, and depictions of things like mountains and trees. So yes, NASA is actually sending our nudes out to space. The fact that they are doing this shows that at least a small part of the organization believes that aliens are out there to receive this message. Number 10. NASA hacked. So first off, how do things like this from NASA even manage to get leaked? Well, apparently by British guys like Gary McKinnon hacking into their system. Between the years 2001 and 2002, Gary broke into 97 different government computers, believing NASA was hiding signs of alien life because of thousands of pictures of UFOs he found hidden away. A former NASA employee had said that satellite images were checked for UFOs and deleted if they showed any evidence, and Gary decided he wanted to break into NASA in order to validate these claims. He says that he found 4 different folders titled Filtered, Unfiltered, Processed, and Raw. He says that his slow internet connection only made him able to download 1 image before he lost access to the rest of them, the picture apparently being a clear image of a cigar-shaped spacecraft. Gary believes that NASA is hiding a wealth of UFO evidence from the public. Number 9. Edgar Mitchell. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell landed on the moon with the Apollo 14 mission, and he also believed that aliens helped prevent a conflict between the United States and Russia. He claimed that top military officials were hiding evidence of unidentified flying objects, and the fact that they were apparently often spotted hovering over White Sands testing range in New Mexico. In 2015, he said, "White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons, and that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear the ETs had been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth." He stated that the military had given him loads of information on aliens and their interactions with Earth, and after he left NASA, he dedicated his life and studies to looking into extraterrestrial existence. Number 8. Mars photos. A man named Richard Hoagland believes that NASA knows a lot more about Mars than they're letting on. He believes that astronauts have been to Mars and that there is a plethora of evidence of alien life on Mars that NASA is insistent on covering up. During the Viking 1 orbit in 1976, NASA released various photographs of the surface of Mars, and some of them seemed to show various different structures and one that apparently even looked like the Sphinx. This led people to believe that these structures had been built by aliens who lived on the Red Planet. Years later, in 1998, NASA took more pictures to debunk the theory, showing only rocks, but Richard and others believe that this is them trying to hide the truth and shrinking the structures that were previously on the planet. He also pulled up a NASA commissioned report from 1960 that recommended any future discoveries of alien life be hidden from the public so as not to disrupt the evolutionary flow of the century. Number 7. Sun object. Last video I talked about NASA cutting off their ISS feed when people believed that they saw a UFO falling towards the Earth. This one is a similar scenario, except it came from footage of the sun. In May of 2012, a YouTube user posted a video of a mysterious object seen flying near the sun in NASA's broadcast. The video zooming in on the pyramid-shaped object that many believe to be some sort of alien craft flying near the sun. A day later, NASA shut down the video feed. In a second video, the user said, "This is a cover-up to prevent us from seeing these things again. NASA must have seen this video and started making plans to change the way you and I are allowed to view it. NASA are clearly trying to stop us looking at the sun." Alien deniers may say that this is just some sort of camera glitch or sun flare, but I think we all know the truth. People telling you not to look at the sun is actually just propaganda so we don't see the aliens. And I'm just gonna say quickly for legal reasons that I do not actually condone staring into the sun. Number 6. The Cube. This also isn't the only case of NASA cutting off the sun livestream after suspicious activity. It happened just this year in May as well. On May 2nd at around 1 in the afternoon, a large black cube appeared to come out of the sun, visible for about 2 seconds. A glitch then appeared on the live stream covering a large part of it, and after it clears, the cube is gone. An expert posted this to YouTube going over the footage and claims that this is evidence of some sort of alien spaceship coming out of the sun. Perhaps they have a secret alien base in there. Also, I say expert because he is a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, and honestly, I'm gonna start calling myself that as well. You guys are watching a video from an expert now, people. Most people in the comments claim that this was just some sort of square-shaped solar flare, while another even claimed it was the manifestation of an angel gaining power from the sun. Number 5. Evidence scale. This one is not so much leaked, but was instead part of an announcement that NASA was going to become more serious about trying to discover life on other planets. They announced that they are going to have a scale to measure extraterrestrial evidence so that it's not as black and white as life or no life. Proposed by NASA Chief Scientist Jim Green, the scale includes 7 different levels, which ranks evidence of life based on their environment and the opinions of the scientific community at large. The highest levels on the scale are of course level 6, verifying signs of life with several different instruments, and level 7, and on different locations on the world. They said in a statement, "We need a better way to share the excitement of our discoveries and demonstrate how each discovery builds on the next, so that we can bring the public and other scientists along on the journey. This new eagerness to bring people along on the journey of discovery could be a sign that they're warming us up to revealing aliens." Number 4. Meteorite. In 2011, a NASA scientist came out claiming that they had found legitimate evidence of alien life, this being from fossils inside a meteorite that landed on Earth. Richard Hoover said that he found evidence of what is basically microscopic little alien bugs, or as the science people call it, filaments and other structures that appear to be fossils of algae known as cyanobacteria, little alien bugs. Laboratory tests done found no evidence that they were the remains of Earth-based organisms, despite being slightly similar to organisms that have been found in the waterways of Spain. Hoover says that the lack of nitrogen, which is essential for life on Earth, proves that they are the remains of extraterrestrial life forms that grew on the parent bodies of the meteorites when liquid water was present, long before the meteorites entered the Earth's atmosphere. This isn't the first time that this sort of evidence has been found on meteorites, and it probably won't be the last. Number 3. Anonymous. We know that the infamous Gary McKinnon managed to hack into the NASA databases and find secret UFO pictures, but did you know that the group known as Anonymous did it as well? In 2017, they made a 12.5-minute long YouTube video where they claimed to have gained access to secret NASA information, telling people that NASA was covering up the discovery of alien life. They said that the organization had recently found 219 new planet candidates, 10 having very similar conditions to Earth. Because of this, the group came to believe that NASA was either incredibly close to finding alien life or had already found it. They also stated that this was a sign NASA was getting closer and closer to revealing the truth about aliens. And while many people brushed it off as being ridiculous, we now know that NASA has just revealed their new UFO study, so Anonymous may have been closer to the truth than we thought. Number 2. Black Knight Satellite. Alright, now let's get into some stuff that is a little more conspiratorial than usual, if that's even possible, and various different ways that people believe NASA is trying to cover stuff up, but apparently not doing a good enough job. There is a conspiracy that there is a satellite called the Black Knight Satellite, which was set up by aliens more than 12,000 years ago in order to spy on humans. Photos from the first shuttle trip to the International Space station in 1998 appeared to show a large black object hovering over Earth, and people believed it was the first photographic evidence of the Black Knight satellite. All previous evidence from years before were just things like radio signals. They also believed that back in the early 1900s, Nikola Tesla actually picked up signals from the Black Knight. Whether or not you actually believe in the existence of the satellite spying on us apparently doesn't matter anymore, as it was reportedly shot down by the Illuminati in 2017. Number 1. Hollow Earth. Alright, this one's not so much about aliens, but trust me on this, I am a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, okay? In 2016, one YouTube user suggested that NASA was trying to cover up the existence of something at the North and South poles. Old satellite images of Earth from space appear to apparently show some sort of a massive hole at each end of the Earth, what they claim to be an entrance. If you're not sold on the flat Earth theory, then let me introduce you to Hollow Earth. As its name suggests, the truth is apparently that the inside of the Earth is hollow and actually contains inner Earth complete with its own sun. Explorers have apparently seen the inner Earth firsthand when flying over the North Pole. So this is just a cool, crazy conspiracy, and it doesn't actually really relate to aliens, but I just wanted to talk about it. So as an alien expert, I'm just gonna say that the inner Earth is actually where all the aliens live and they control us from the inside.